Hello students, welcome to the lecture on Human Resource Audit, and after the lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand the concept of HR audit, explain the designing HRD audit process, describe the preventive and corrective actions, define the role of HR audit in business improvement, review the methodology of HR audit, analyze the limitations of HRD audit. Let's start with a brief introduction to Human Resource Audit. Human Resource HR Audit is the process of examining policies, procedures, documentation systems, and practices with respect to an organization's human resource functions. The purpose of such an audit is to reveal the strengths and the weaknesses in the non-profit's human resource system and any issues needing resolution. An audit works best when the focus is on analyzing and improving the overall human resource functioning in the organization. An audit itself is a diagnostic tool, not a prescriptive instrument. It will help to identify what an organization is missing or needs to improve, but it cannot tell them what an organization needs to do to address these issues. It is most useful when an organization is ready to act on the findings. A human resource audit aims at ascertaining the effectiveness of the HR department and its functions. The basic goal of an HR audit is to find out the HR interventions that will increase the firm's competitive advantage. An HR audit also ensures the compliance of the HR department with the goals, plans, and the policies of the organization. Similarly, it makes sure that the statutory provisions and other regulations of the government are followed properly without any deviations. It also makes certain that the HR policies are followed uniformly across the entire organization. Let's now learn about the concept of HR audit. An audit is a means by which an organization can measure where it currently stands and determine what it has to accomplish to improve its human resources function. It involves systematically reviewing all aspects of human resources, usually in a checklist fashion, ensuring that the government regulations and company policies are being adhered to. The key to an audit is to remember it is a learning or a discovery tool, not a test. Human resource audit provides a quick way to take stock of a company's human resources and practices with an eye towards improving them. While there are different ways to conduct an HR audit, depending on the company's goals, audits usually involve interviewing senior and mid-level management, reviewing the company's HR policies and the firms, and sometimes even surveying employees. The advantage of HR audits is that they bring a level of expertise to bear on issues that while important, most companies simply do not have the time or the capacity to undertake them. A basic audit will address compliance issues such as the hiring processes or the personnel policies. The company owns the findings and can choose whether, when, and to what degree to act on them. The HR audit helps by providing feedback on the value of the contribution of the HR function to the organization's strategic business objectives, assessing the quality of HR practices, policies, and delivery, reporting on the extent of statutory HR compliance and remedial action required, accessing HR and line management relationships and ways these can be improved, setting guidelines for establishing HR performance standards, and identifying areas for change and improvement with specific recommendations. The HR audit focuses on the following elements of people management: organizational data, strategic HRM overview, staff communication and change management, HRM operational delivery, staff performance and morale, and HR performance measures. The purpose of an HR audit: it is to ensure the effective utilization of an organization's human resources, to review compliance with a myriad of administrative regulations, to instill a sense of confidence in management and the human resources function that it is well managed and prepared to meet potential challenges, to maintain or enhance the organization's and the department's reputation in the community, to perform a due diligence review for shareholders or potential investors or owners. And now we will study the need of human resource audit. Human resource audit is highly useful for the purpose: does the organization regularly forecast the supply of and demand for employees in various categories? Do job analysis exist for all positions in the organization? Are all potential sources of recruitment identified and evaluated? Are measurable selection criteria developed and used while filling up jobs? Do effective training and development programs exist? Is there a performance evaluation system that helps assess past and potential performance? Is the remuneration program designed to motivate employees? Is the plant unionized? Does a grievance procedure exist? Does the organization have high quality of work life? Does the HRM practice contribute to organizational effectiveness? Does the management underestimate the capacity of HRM to contribute to organizational effectiveness? Let's learn about designing HRD audit process. Human resources staff should conduct periodic departmental audits to ensure the organization's compliance with employment regulations and human resources best practices. Audit processes and methods include examinations of employment records, salary data, eligibility documentation, and performance standards to measure the effectiveness of workplace policies and departmental procedures. Compensation policy. In a compensation audit, human resources staff study occupational groups and individual positions to ensure employees are compensated for comparable work according to tenure, performance, and qualifications. Management performance. Organizations that require regular ongoing feedback from managers often codify their requirements in leadership training manuals or within performance standards for managers. Human resource staff can then review employee files to determine if managers are providing employees with the level of continuous feedback necessary to maintain performance levels. Legal fees. The human resources process for auditing compliance with federal and state employment laws include reviewing employee relation files. When conducting an audit for compliance with equal employment opportunity policies, human resource staff examines the types of complaints employees file. They look at complaints related to allegations of discrimination, harassment, and unfair employment practices, and compare the number of filed complaints to those that escalate to formal matters such as litigation or arbitration. Employment eligibility. Employment eligibility audits are common human resource audits, whether they are performed in-house or by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Federal Bureau responsible for obtaining data related to enforcing employment eligibility regulations. Documentation necessary for establishing eligibility to work in the United States includes citizenship information and eligibility records.
What's the biggest challenge for HR professionals?
Well, I think the biggest challenge by HR professionals, and there are a number of very infamous attacks on HR in terms of, you guys can never give us an answer. I can walk into the financial area and say how much is left on that budget line, and they can tell me right away. But I walk into HR and I say, how are we doing in terms, for example, again, of absenteeism? How are we doing in terms of our compensation? How are we doing in terms of our occupational health and safety? And so this is the biggest challenge, is to turn around and say, well, we've done an audit, we compare well. In areas where we're not comparing as well, we have an action plan. And we'll put the action plan to management at the next meeting and ask for the appropriate resources at that point.
How do you conduct an HR audit?
You start off with education, and then you start off probably by speaking to everybody in the organization in terms of where the hot spots are, what is it that you want to measure, and where do you stand in terms of the industry, where do you stand in terms, basically, the whole workforce across Canada.
Why is auditing the impact of HR on an organization so important?
It's important because we want to sit at the table. So we want to be able to say, here's where the function is. The other thing that it does is it gives everybody a sense of how they're doing. It can be a very positive tool in terms of an organization to take pride after you do an audit to say, you know what, despite what people might say or despite beliefs and rumors, our audit shows that we're doing well in that area.
We will now discuss about preventive and corrective actions. The purpose of the corrective action procedure is to outline the process for ensuring that action required to fix deficiencies identified from any hazard identifying activity is documented and tracked until completed. Such hazard identifying activity includes inspections, testing, audits, as well as hazard and incident reporting. Definitions. Corrective action, any action taken to eliminate or remedy an undesirable situation or condition. Hazard is a situation or thing that has the potential to cause harm to people, property, or the environment. Hierarchy of risk control, the ways of controlling risk, rank from the highest level of protection and reliability to the lowest. Procedure, identity, corrective actions. Activities that identify corrective or preventative action opportunities include conducting workplace inspections, testing, inspecting and monitoring of plant and equipment, consulting with staff, students and others. Non-conformances from HSMS internal audits. Non-conformances from self-audit tool SAT, following up on hazard reporting and investigating the causes of incidents, addressing any non-conforming product prior to purchase and use, the screening of contractors, service providers and labor hire employees, investigating H&S complaints, reviewing H&S system failures.
So for my HR audit portion, I decided to focus around diversity and multicultural, which basically orients around equal opportunity employment for equal employment opportunity for all. Our our company that we decided to do research on was FedEx. And FedEx is a diverse place. However, I did have some questions for their employees because unfortunately I wasn't able to get a hold of their HR manager. So I decided to ask one of their employees to help me answer some of the questions. My first question was, does your organization have a stated policy covering equal employment opportunity as well as its compliance with all applicable distribution laws? FedEx, they do have a stated law against discrimination towards any age group, sex, or race. And they decided to help me by quoting something from their handbook, their employee handbook, which I decided to put the code up there, which is: we value contribution and perspective of all employees, regardless of race, gender, culture, religion, age, nationality, disability, or sexual orientation. So for the next one, my next question was: do you offer training or management on sexual harassment awareness and legal requirements? I was told that all of their managers are required to have a sexual harassment training, and the employees had a small workshop as well. And what he told me about in the training was that one thing that stood out to him was how, when it comes to showing when it comes to complimenting other employees on perhaps their looks or appearance, they're all told to always focus on an object. For instance, they aren't allowed to say, "You look beautiful today," but they are allowed to compliment a hair or an earring or a headband or a shirt. For instance, they're allowed to say, "That is a really nice shirt," instead of saying, "You look really nice today." So they were asked to focus on the object and not the person. That was something they shared with me. And my next question to them was, does your organization have an explicit policy against sexual harassment? And yes, they do. And I just paraphrased some of their clause from their handbook, which is: unwelcome sexual advantages and other inappropriate personal conducts are prohibited. They strictly prohibit and have no tolerance for any type of harassment. Any acts that create the potential for harassment. Harassment may occur when, with your words, actions, or behavior, create a hostile, intimidating, or offensive work environment, such as making demeaning comments, jokes, or gestures. And another thing that comes within this is also the culture part, because something that may be culturally acceptable for one may not be equally acceptable for someone from a different culture. As Californians, we love to hug and high five each other. However, there are many cultures out there that don't accept that, so it is important to be respectful to all. And then my final and last question was, Is there an internal process of for employees to register complaints concerning discrimination and harassment? And FedEx has an open door policy when it comes to complaints. If you're this actually the last part is also from their handbook. If your manager or company contact cannot resolve a matter, or if you believe they are the part of the problem, you can contact your human resource department or call the FedEx alert line. They have a special alert line where they keep your complaints anonymous, so you won't get in trouble or have to face any form of consequences for filing a complaint.
Let's say you run a business. Maybe you already do. You've got your office, your phone, your computer, your investors, your manufacturing materials, and many other resources. But perhaps the most important resource is your employees. As your business grows, so do your employees, both in numbers as well as in their talents and attitudes. Managing this resource can be a complex task, and that's where a human resources department shines. HR is more than a mediator resolving employee conflicts. Modern human resource departments do many things, such as staffing, training, professional development, and worker protection. Human resource departments act as a guide to help an organization meet its goals and ensure its vision through developing strong teams who do their job well. By mastering the multiple branches of HR, you'll be better equipped to deal with company issues and employee welfare, empowering you to be a successful and critical part of any business.
Let's study the methodology of HR audit. There are 4 methods of conducting HR audit. For HR audit, either combination of methods or all the methods are used. Individual interview method, group interview method, workshop method, and questionnaire method. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. A human resources HR audit is the process of examining policies, procedures, documentation, systems, and practices with respect to an organization's human resources function. The human resources process for auditing compliance with federal and state employment laws, including reviewing employee relations file. Employee relations staff responsible for investigating workplace issues is usually knowledgeable of the most effective ways to audit employee relations matters as well as best methods for measuring the integrity of an employee relations program. Employment eligibility audits are common human resource audits, whether they are performed in-house or by the US. Quality improvements and establishing TQM systems require a high degree of involvement of employees. Group interviews and discussions with the employees and/or executives of large companies for HR audit facilitate the collection of information about effectiveness of existing systems.